Welcome and thank you for listening in. I'm Becky Freemall, and this is Next Gen Cyber, the future of cybersecurity, a podcast of the U.S. Cyber Range, where we explore cutting-edge trends, emerging technologies, and the future of cybersecurity careers, featuring thought leaders, researchers, and educators from across the field. Today, we would like to welcome Jim Tippey, the Department Chair of Information Technology and Cybersecurity at Excelsior University. Jim brings over 20 years of IT and cybersecurity experience, having served in various technical leadership roles before transitioning to academia in 2017. His educational background uniquely combines degrees in religion and divinity with a master's in information assurance and a doctorate in computer science, with a focus on cybersecurity. At Excelsior, Jim has been instrumental in developing new programs that balance technical excellence with ethical considerations. Jim, I can't breathe. That is a lot. You have done a lot of amazing things. So with that, welcome Jim Tippey to our podcast.
Thank you, Becky. It's good to be here.
I'm going to let you do the talking from here on out.
I understand. It's a lot.
It is, but that cybersecurity is a lot, and it's so important. And that is one of the things I just love about the U.S. Cyber Range and just what you do as an educator and a department chair, which is bringing up that next generation, that the future of our cybersecurity careers that are out there need to be filled. All right, so first question, I just want to kind of kick off with Excelsior and the U.S. Cyber Range relationship and your role and how the range is used to optimize that student success.
Yeah, so Excelsior University is 100% online, asynchronous learning. So we're a little different than your traditional undergrad. Our average student is, 35, 36 years old. So again, a little different than our traditional undergrad. We serve a large military audience with over 35% being military population, including some really bizarre military experiences. We have students that are active military working in really unique situations like nuclear submarines. How do you do schoolwork on a nuclear sub, right? They dive, they do their schoolwork during the week, and when they surface, they upload their data and pull down the next set of data they need to work on. Requires flexibility from our faculty to be able to work with students in those environments, flexibility on the students' part, but we find ways to make this asynchronous work even in those really situations that we really never would even think of, right? As a person sitting here in the middle of the United States, I don't think about all our sailors that are out there in subs and how they might want to do education. So we try to accommodate and work with students where they are. It's part of our ethos, part of our mission is to meet students where they are, including those that are deployed military, whether they're on a submarine or whether they're somewhere else in the world on a deployment. We're there to help meet them where they are.
When you say meet them where they are, I would gather that's both like physically, geographically where they are and where they are mentally in their life and their career. And when you're talking about those mid-30s, one of the things we talk a lot about at the U.S. Cyber Range is just the importance of that hands-on education, that it's not just theory and it goes beyond lecture. Talk about how that thought process, I feel like, really connects when you got someone, I don't know, diving however far you dive in a submarine, I don't know, and come back up. Like they need the real hands-on stuff like yesterday.
Right. Yeah, and you're exactly right, Becky. Right. So we get into this not that 18 to 22-year-olds, 18 to 23-year-olds don't need real practical. You get into their mid-30s, right? They have some life experience under their belt. Some of them are actually working in the field of IT and cyber, and they literally are taking what we're doing in the class today and applying it at work tomorrow, right? So labs like U.S. Cyber Range provides are essential and crucial to our education because we have to go beyond the theory. I've often said, not that they don't need to know the theory, but if they can't put hands on the keyboard and do something with it, we've missed an opportunity as educators. We're not doing justice to the industry. While we may not be able to keep 100% current as fast as cyber and IT churn in the industry, we can at least use hands-on keyboards and teach our students what it's like to get into a real live, or at least as live as we can make it in a simulated environment like US Cyber Range does a good job of doing. Get them computers, get them networks, get them systems out there where they can go and practice that theory and those actions that we were doing. So their hands on their keyboard. So when they graduate from any of our programs, whether it's bachelor's or master's programs, they don't walk into the workplace and go, what's this command line thing, right? They've had experience, they've gotten in there, they've seen a text only environment. And so they're not freaking out their first day of work. Instead, they're going, I got this. I've been there. I've done that. I know what I'm doing. And so that's where US Cyber Range Labs give us that ability to go beyond them teaching and reading and actually click on buttons and type letters and go and chase and do things in a cyber environment.
You said something that really caught my attention about, hey, I got this, I can do this. And not only do I think that that is so imperative for the student to have that confidence, but man, does that feel good as an employer to be like, oh gosh, like they got me. Because they have big things and bosses they also have to respond to. So they're like, hey, Jim Tippey, he's got this. Like, what are your thoughts on just that aspect of
I think you're exactly right. I think that's one of our responsibilities, and I'm seeing education as a larger body making the shift, and that's towards competency-based assessment. How can we prove that the student can do what we claim they can do? And that's vital in cyber, it's vital in IT. If I'm going to teach you how to set up a firewall, well, it may not be the firewall brand that your company's run that you work for in the future is running. You better understand the basic principles of having done it, having gone in and configured a firewall, right? You understand input and output rules. And so you've got this competency that you can do it, because then we as educators have some value to industry, and industry helps speak into our curriculum so that we're helping to do those things. And we have those regular conversations with industry to say, what does a bachelor's in cyber graduate student need to do when they graduate? What does a master's in cyber, what hands-on piece do they need to have experience with when they graduate so that they're ready to take that job that you would expect? And while we can't meet 100% of what every employer out there wants, there's no way everyone wants something different. We can certainly help build competencies around that. Like you said, how can we build the hands-on piece so that they have assurance? The student, I've got this, I can do it. I taught a workforce development program for a while. And one of the things I kept telling my students is you can do hard things, right? You have done hard things. You're here. We've done hard things in this class, things you never thought you could accomplish. And so now you know you can do something harder tomorrow. When you're faced with that thing, that because we did technical stuff, we did hands-on stuff, you understand how to do that. You can transfer that knowledge and that confidence you gain from doing that into something that maybe you've never seen before. I've never seen this operating system before. It's okay. You've seen 2, 3, 4 different operating systems. You can take that and you can do those hard things in a new situation. And that's part of what doing practical hands-on beyond the theory, beyond the book knowledge gives us, is that hands-on technical knowledge to be able to move on and say, I can do hard things because I did something hard yesterday. Today's not going to stop me.
Right. It's building that mindset. Like, okay, maybe I haven't seen this exact thing, but I didn't see this exact thing 10 times over on the range. And now, I figured them all out. So I can do this.
Yeah. And we train their mind to think a little differently than what they maybe did before they started. And that's where I really see hands-on education helping our students, especially in cyber and tech, helping our students be able to grasp those things in a rapidly changing environment. How do you prepare for something you don't know? Well, you hit things you don't know over and over again. And then your mind doesn't say, I've never seen this, I can't do it. Your mind says, oh, I've got this, right? I've never seen it before, but I've never seen dozens of things that I did over the last 12, 18, 3 years, whatever. In class, there's always things I haven't seen. And I can do it. I can move on to that next thing.
I feel like talking about mindset and, hey, I can do the thing is so imperative too, not just for the students, but for the educators. Because sometimes we get feedback from the professors and the instructors like, I'm supposed to be the expert in this room, and I'm not sure I want to bring on this US Cyber Ranger, this new platform, because then I feel foolish if I don't know how to do it, and I need to be in the know. And I don't know, and maybe it's a mindset at each university and each college how you administer hands-on learning platforms so that teachers are also comfortable and confident to say, "Hey, I'm going to bring this to my student." How do you guys do that? And I know you have kind of, I don't know if you call it a hub and spoke model, but you kind of have that centralized group, which is you, and then your professors, you administer it to them. Is that correct?
That's correct. As an asynchronous program, right? We do core development, and then we distribute that out to multiple faculty to teach. And so what that means for you as Cyber Range is I'm kind of that hub. I'm the one who holds the keys, holds the access, chooses the labs, helps troubleshoot when everything goes wrong. It happens. I don't, whatever environment, it doesn't matter, right? Something goes wrong, someone's got to be in there to help fix it.
Mhm.
And for us, that ends up being me. Um, and part of that comes from over 20 years of experience of not knowing what I'm walking into at any given environment. I can think of many, many stories where I hit a problem and I don't know what the problem is. I don't know what the solution is. I often didn't, sometimes didn't even know there was a problem. I think of a situation where I literally walked into work one day and I'm like, this computer has a virus after sitting down and working on it for a few minutes. And my boss is like, so run a virus scan. I'm like, I have. It didn't, he said, so it find one? No, it didn't find one. Then it doesn't have a virus. And I'm like, I'm telling you it has a virus. And we ran 5 different antivirus softwares against it and found nothing. And I'm still like, no, it has a virus. See right here, this service shouldn't be running. This file shouldn't be here. Right? Ran down through the registry. This shouldn't be here. Pointing out the places where we had malware installed on the machine.
Oh,
Contacted our malware company, our vendor that we were paying, uploaded all the stuff up to their thing. We had a 0-day virus, one no one had ever seen before. But because I understood my computer, my builds, and theory of operating systems, I was able to sit down and go, this computer has a virus in a matter of a few minutes, and then work with my vendor to get the tools to clean it up because there's no way I was writing those tools myself. But seeing that thing I'd never seen before, no one had ever seen it. It was an
wow.
unknown virus, right? And so I think back on the experiences like that, and how do we get our students to have those experiences before they're in the workplace? I've told our students, right, there's 2 ways to learn. One way is in a classroom where you've got safety nets. You've got your faculty member. We have US Cyber Range. We got safe environments for you to learn. The other way is we just throw you in the fire and hope you don't burn. Um, that's the way I learned a lot of my knowledge, right? I learned on the job with no safety nets, no, production systems, no test environments. Go make your changes and do it and hope you don't blow the company up. Well, that's a scary way to learn, and I don't recommend it. So what we do with US Cyber Range and with uh, partners like this is we produce those safe environments for our students and our faculty. Our faculty can't know everything. This is one of my messages to faculty. You can't know everything. I walk into class on a regular basis and admit to my students, I don't know everything, right? You have a question, bring it to me. If I don't know, we'll figure it out together. And we've done that a lot. We sat down on these ranges and went, I don't know, but let's solve it, right? Where would you start? Here's where I would start. And we have these conversations back and forth with students, and they're like, I'd never thought of starting there. And I look at some of their solutions, I'm going, I would have never thought of starting there. But between us, we get to the proper solution. And that the collaboration that it brings between faculty and student with some of these range challenges is also a beautiful thing to see. But that takes a certain level of trust from the faculty to walk into a room and go, I don't know everything. It's okay. I know a lot. I know how to get there, but I don't have all the answers. And students look at me and go, what do you mean you're admitting you don't know everything? I'm like, I'll admit it up front. There's way too much out there. There's no way I know everything. Even for the lab I'm assigning you. I played with the lab. I probably did the lab, but I may have done the lab 6 months ago and I may not remember how I did it, right? So if we get stuck, we'll do it together. It's okay. And I love that. I love learning from my students as much as I love teaching them sometimes. So.
And I think the parallel in listening to you talk about higher ed and the teacher relationship to the students is, I've spent most of my life in the corporate world and in broadcast journalism and not in the classroom. And it's funny because this past fall, I've been doing some adjunct teaching and I can't help it. Like naturally, I think of me as like the manager, the leader, and I call them the team. I keep calling my class and the students my team. And it's funny because I'll be like, okay, so when we're talking about you guys, we need the team. And I'm like, or the classroom, I'm like, you know what, you guys, I'm just going to keep saying team because that's really, you're my team and we're going to do the thing and I'm your team. And
Yeah.
in the corporate world, as we all know, just like in higher ed, the best leaders are the ones who get to your level and work with you and empower you to eventually, you hope, be better than you are at what you do. And it's a mindset for the educators too, like, hey, you got this and there's nothing wrong. If you know everything, ooh, okay, so first of all, let me just back that bus up. If I'm interviewing someone for a job and they say they got it all figured out, that is the biggest red flag I'm like, ooh, not a hireable and not a coachable person. So you need leaders to say, hey, I'm either, what do they say, ripe and rotten or green and growing? Well, those are your 2 options. I hope you're always green and growing, even as educators.
Exactly. And that was always my thing. Still, my point is I want to feed students curiosity. I want to teach them to be curious, right? What is around the next corner? What is the next tech piece that's coming that's going to impact my company? And so
Yeah.
when your boss comes to you and says, have you heard about? If you haven't, say no. If you have, say, yeah, I was just reading about that and I think it could impact this way, or if you haven't heard about it, no, but I'd love to learn more, which is still what I did with my students, right? So you hear about the virus attack over the weekend. Nope, missed that one. What can you tell me about it? Right? Let's have this conversation. Bring the rest of the team, bring the rest of the class in. Let's have a conversation around this attack that happened. How many of you read anything about it? Oh, you're the only one. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it today? And so when I was teaching synchronously, we'd have those conversations at the beginning of class fairly often because there's a lot of cyber attacks happening, and I certainly don't see them all. Or they mention one, yeah, I saw it, but what did you see? Like we get in a dialogue back and forth and bring the rest of the class into the dialogue as
Yeah.
we turn that into a learning opportunity using what's going on today, right now, not just what happened 3, 5, 10 years ago that's in the textbook that we might happen to be using. Textbooks have a hard time keeping up with what's happening today. Lab systems have a hard time keeping up with the virus or the malware or the attack that's happening right now. But we
Right.
can have those conversations and still learn from the things that can be in the environments and apply. How do we apply these lessons learned across things?
I mean, I think as leaders and as educators, which are the leaders in the classroom, as leaders, our job is not to know the most. Our job is to empower and educate the people around us.
I agree completely, and I've seen my graduates and my students excel, and they're all doing amazing things. Like I said, I've been in higher ed for a little over 7 years now, and it's amazing to look and go, that was my student. They graduated 3 years ago, and look what they're doing today, right? I'm following them on LinkedIn, and you see they get a promotion, or they get a new certification, and it's great to know that you were a part of that learning journey for them.
Yeah.
Um,
You saying that, Jim, I went to Ohio University for my undergrad, and I mean, everyone's not going to have this experience, but I was lucky enough that I had a college advisor who very much was about, I'm here to empower you, not be the one that knows all the things. And maybe that's really where it all started for me. But Jim Tippey, he still reaches out to me to this day. He still calls once in a blue moon. I'll get a phone call and it'll be like, is this Becky Fremall? The blah, 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 whatever title I have at that moment. And I'm like, hey, Joe. And he's like, I'm following you. I pay attention on LinkedIn and I knew how to so to hunt you down and call you. He's like, I am so proud of you. And I just love that you have sometimes those lifelong educators and I mean, he was my educator then and now my mentor. I mean, he will never not be my mentor. So, so important. Um, Talk too about the military side of it and just that age of being kind of what was a mid-30s is kind of your average student. When they talk about their experience and problem solving when they're
yeah,
immersed in it, in that environment.
yeah, and that really, I'm having taught traditional undergrad and now teaching this older student population. 30 mid 30s is not old, but it's older than 18. Having taught both, my population now brings to it a wealth of experience, whether it's in a technical field or not. Right, my military students, my military active and inactive, those that have progressed out of their service, bring with them a wealth of experience from their lives that they then can apply to the classroom. They understand troubleshooting methodologies. They understand whether they can call it that or not. Not all of them have the terms right to
Right.
hang things. They call it something else because they were trained by the Army or the Air Force or the Navy, or they call it their own things. But they bring that troubleshooting mentality. They bring those critical thinking skills to the table. They bring those life experiences that they've had. And what we do both through the classroom and through tools like US Cyber Range is we help them figure out how to apply these other skills, life skills they've developed, their curiosity, their grit, their troubleshooting, their all these critical thinking, all these things. How do you apply that in a technical realm? And that's a beautiful to watch. Where when I'm working with 18-year-olds, sometimes we're teaching them some of those life skills because
Yeah.
they just don't have the depth of experience yet. They'll get there. No, don't get me wrong. Give them another 17 years, they'll have those experiences. But sometimes those extra experiences they've had in life, good and bad, hard and easy, have given them some skills, and we can take those skills and apply them into a lab environment and help them figure out how do we hone and apply those into a technical environment. And at the end of the day, they're going, I can do this. Wow. I've had several students. cyber sounded cool, but I didn't think I could do it right, and after they get into the program and in a ways they're like, this is amazing, I can do this, and they can begin to see themselves in the field, in technology, doing something for the good of the world, for the good of the country, for all those things that we want to accomplish. They can do it, right? It's wild to see, but that's where they get to.
So cool to hear that too, because I think about that age, and like you said, I would love to be 35 again. It's young in my brain, but they are an older student population, so sometimes I would think, well, they already are in the military, or they already are out in the workforce. They already know the things, but it sounds like the range and the U.S. cyber range and online learning still is so important.
Still crucially important. When I was teaching at a traditional college, I had a couple of students that were 35 plus. Well, we'll just leave them at that. They were well above 35 at the time, but they were still in that mid age, 35 to 45 age bracket. And I thought the same thing. One of them had been in technology for 20 plus years. I'm like, what am I teaching him? What was this class bringing to the table? And I've sat down with him. I've sat down with some of our students here at Excelsior and asked that question: what are we bringing to the table? And the stories they tell, they're telling just what I told you, right? You're teaching me how to apply this, what I thought I knew over here in a new way. You're teaching me to apply my critical thinking to these problems. You're teaching me better problem solving methods. That your hands-on labs are giving me experiences that I've never had in a production environment, because everyone, they had a junior position maybe, and everyone kept me away from those challenging problems. But in a lab environment, we can put them into a more challenging environment because they can't really break anything in the lab environment. We can always click reset, right? When in a production environment, there is no reset button. Lab environments, we can reset it for them. And so that's part of what these older students sometimes are expressing is, and then we get those that are just complete career changers, right? They're coming out of marketing or teaching, or K-12 teaching, or maybe they were working at a factory for the last 20 years and they never always thought, hey, I kind of like computers, but life didn't let them pursue that. And so we end up with both of these pockets in the same classroom, and that's beautiful to watch as they begin to interact with each other through discussion posts and through group assignments and things, as they begin to learn and teach from each other.
You've got not only your own kind of outside of education, corporate world experience, and now you've seen students go through their higher education journey and move on. Talk about that. I thought we keep talking about the cybersecurity hiring gap, and what do we do to fix that? Like, what does the industry need? Higher ed and the U.S. cyber range, these online platforms, what do we need to do to help them?
Yeah, I think we're starting to do it. I think part of what we need to do is we all need to get in the same room, which we're beginning to do. Don't get me wrong. We're coming together, industry and labs and higher ed and all these components, government. We're all starting to come to the table, but we need to continue to have these conversations, right? What is an entry level position? What skills, what competencies do you need to hire my grad into your entry level position? And then we look at US Cyber Range and these lab platforms and we say, okay, these are the competencies, these are the lab types we need, and you all are able to help us build them. And we're in the last 7.5 years, I've seen those conversations start to happen. We're a long ways from done. There still is this huge challenge, and I see it in my new cyber students trying to find jobs. It's hard to get that entry level position because not all industries defining entry level is what we define, the student we higher ed would define entry level, right? Entry level position, 3 to 5 years experience. Wait a minute, how am I entering at 3 to 5 years experience, right? And that's the reality we run into when we start looking at cyber jobs. And so I often will have the conversation with my grads, with my near grads still. So look for a job that does, look for, to take that other job that doesn't have that. They can get your foot in the door at a company, they get your foot in the door in a technical role and show them you can do more, right? Especially at these larger companies that have room to promote people up. Spend 6, 12, 18 months showing them that you can do the cyber stuff. And for some people that works great. For some people, they're not at a place in their life where that works well for them. But we have those conversations about how do we address this. There's a huge gap of cyber professionals, but how do we get students to the point where corporates looking for them to hire them into that gap, into that role. And that's sometimes the real challenge. I think that's where the conversation between government, industry, education, lab platforms, we all come to the table and we continue the conversation we've started having. I've seen it start. I've seen some great pieces come from that. And I think we'll get there, but I think it's an ongoing conversation for us here, at least here in the US.
I agree. I mean, that is a big part. And I know we've talked about this, outside of the podcast, but this podcast itself and the US Cyber Range holding once a semester, these cyber summits, it's a huge effort we have. Like, hey, it's not just an online learning platform. This is one piece of this bigger conversation. I think in cybersecurity, IT tech, a lot of times people feel like everything's so like sterile and digitized and like there's no human feel. And you have to have that aspect, which is again why we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah, yeah, you do, right? You got to have the human piece of it too. We can never really fully remove the human element. So,
Moving forward and kind of circling back to the beginning, when you talk about the technical and the ethical aspects and how you're really focused on that, I would love to just wrap up talking about moving to the future and kind of pulling all those aspects, the ethical aspects, the human element, the technical know-how. You need to know the cybersecurity side that involves no humans and sitting there at a laptop or your machine doing your thing. How does it all tie together and where are we headed? That's not a small question, Jim. Good luck with the answer.
yeah, that's not a small question at all, right? That's a
Solve the world's
question.
problems.
Right, right, and I'm not going to solve the world's problems in the next couple of minutes, but it's a question I think we as educators, we as industry leaders are called to be answering, right? How do we prepare for the next generation? How do we prepare for next generation of cyber worker force, cyber leaders, cyber attacks? They're all on the horizon. They're all that piece that are out there somewhere that we got to be building towards. And so, what does that look like from an educational perspective? I keep telling it's become verbatim within Excelsior as I talk about my programs, and that is moving beyond the ones and zeros. I'm going to keep teaching the technical. My programs will teach the technical knowledge and hands-on. Those two pieces go hand in hand to me. They teach the technical theory, the technical hands-on. But what I want to do is I want to move beyond that, and I want to teach them these social and ethical concerns that go with the topic that they're learning. How do we get them considering the ethical implications of the software that they're developing if they're being software developers, right? Software is not ethically neutral. It is developed with, now can it be misused? 100%. But you're developing it with a goal in mind. So how do we do this ethically? How do we ethically handle the fact that I'm the system administrator for the company, so I have the keys to the kingdom. I have access to all of the data. What are the ethical considerations and concerns that come with this? How do we get our students to begin wrapping their heads around what these ethical pieces are? What do you do with this access? Just because I have access doesn't mean I need to access things. Doesn't mean I should access things. How do we begin to wrap our heads around the social element of things? And one of the conversations I was having even earlier today was around the language we use in tech and talking about master slave terminology and how do we move away from these terms that carry baggage with them, in primary, secondary, instead of master slave when we're referring to relationships. We've had these terms in tech for generations of workers, for literally decades. But how do we now be socially responsible enough to begin the conversations of moving beyond them into other terms? And so I think all of this begins to get to what does the future look like? The future looks like we've come a long ways. I mean, I'll be right. I've got my master's back in 08. I in 04, I looked around and said, I think the security thing's gonna be a big deal. And I had one of my bosses go, I don't think so. I think we're fine. We got a firewall. And I'm like, I think you're missing something, right? And so I really, even 20 years ago, started looking into the security thing, going, I think it's going to matter. I think we got to dig deeper and further and wrap our arms around what does this look like from a technical, ethical, societal piece. And I'm still there today. I think we've come a long ways. We have look around 20 years, we've seen huge amounts of changes, but we're not there yet. Part of that is this ever-moving target. The target we're trying to protect, the attacks that are happening, artificial intelligence keeps advancing. All these, quantum computing's in the news again. Yay, we're doing crazy things with quantum computing. That's going to shift our conversation again. But it still all boils around We teach them theory, we give them hands-on experience, and we teach them to think societally and ethically about everything they're doing. Ask those big hard questions. Not necessarily answer them, but ask them. Begin the conversation. And I think if we as industry, we as education, and we as lab providers begin to circle around these things, I think we can make a stronger and better future for society and for cybersecurity.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Happy to do it. It was a great conversation, Becky.
It was. I really enjoyed it. And again, Jim Tippey, the Department Chair of Information Technology and Cybersecurity at Excelsior University. And thank you to our listeners for joining us for Next Gen Cyber, the Future of Cybersecurity, a podcast of the U.S. Cyber Range.